if you're thinking ahead and planning ahead, so that you not only get your camera ready art, take a picture of it and send that to the printer, right? But the original art, because let's face it, all those pages that Kirby made, and Gil Kane and all these like classics, John Romita, the original art is worth way more than they got paid to do it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Welcome,
Episode 38. Yes, go ahead.
welcome, one and all. I'm gonna turn on my little extra light here. So yeah, we are making Turbo Pit Fighter. Turbo Pit Fighter. Turbo is the name of the character. Pit Fighter is her job. This is a science fiction comic / graphic novel, post-apocalyptic setting. We're going to be bouncing around timelines and flashbacks, and we're going to be going through all kinds of ups and downs with our character, who is Turbo Pit Fighter, a strong female. Um, I don't want to like recap every single time for people that might be watching repeatedly or binging or whatever, so that it doesn't get repetitious. That's one thing I hate about the cartoonist kayfabe is like, oh, I just like want to skip when they're doing all their plugs and all that. It's like, can we
Oh,
just
I
get
do.
can
I
we get to
do.
the content, please?
Yeah.
Um, but I guess people can skip around our content too, and if we're talking about something boring, just hit the little right hand, just two touches on the right hand, and it'll skip like 15 seconds or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't pollute your mind. But yeah, hopefully we're giving like some essential nuggets here of the comic book world, and specifically in this edition, we're going to be moving away from this page one cover montage and getting back into the sequential story pages and resuming a kick-ass fight between Turbo, the trophy girl, Gopher, and a band of marauding berserkers. So I think this page is just about wrapped up. I just have to finish like all these little silhouette men, and I think that's it. And how about you? What sequence are you on now?
I am on page 19. I'm very excited. I'm finishing up. I just did a little jump around there, flash through there. And I'm ready to hit page 20 this episode, which, just so everybody knows, I am in charge of inking 28 interior pages for issue number one of Turbo Pit Fighter. So I'm actually getting a little anxious. I think I was expressing this last episode, and I probably will be. Is not that I want to like get through inking these 28 pages, but I want to see the efforts that we're moving forward on in that physical print form. But I don't want to just be, hammering this out and then having subpar work. So I'm, restraining myself to not,
Well, yeah, don't you
you know,
don't you do like you say 80% of the inking, then go back over it to refine?
yeah, yep. So, one of the things too I've been experimenting with, which I'll share later, is using um, black color pencil and also just graphite. I sent you one of these sticks, which is this graphite. It's water soluble.
Uh-huh.
And you've seen a little bit of what I've been doing with it, but it gives a really nice kind of gray value in here. So I'm kind of interested to see how I can get that throughout all the entire pages. So the big reason why I do the 80% is, where you're at on page one, even in your own, learning curve,
Mm-hmm.
will drastically grow by 28, and to kind of see, all these little weirdo things, when you're pushing to finish the page, page 1, page 13, page 17, 18, 28, there's a bit of wonkiness in there, and you see that in comics, especially independent comics, where there's great burst of energy in the beginning, and then at the end it sort of just fizzles out. It seems like there's just a lot of black lines and shapes, and a lot. And I think on the other side, though, in the more professional arena of Marvel and DC, Image, how you they'll kind of only they'll only put out 70-80%, so then there's this very flatness, no matter what the scene entails, the panel entails, it just has this kind of flatness. And I love the books that are out there that I'm attracted to, that give me a variety just in the inks when it is a black and white book. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, we have the luxury of not being on a deadline, so you have to also,
yeah.
take that into consideration. Those guys are on a
uh,
production schedule, and
uh. Yeah, the other thing though too, when it comes to my inking, I do a scratchboard, and I have locally a show I've been in for the last 6 years called the Big Little Show, where it's a formatted show of 6 by 6 inch panels.
uh-huh.
So everybody is allowed to put in up to 4 of these 6 by 6. And if you can imagine this gallery wall, it's just one big long wall. And there's all of these panels and stuff. And it's called the Big Little Show at the Tallyville Shopping Center here in Wilmington, Delaware. Um, and the owners are super great. And they have comic book history, the owners, Rick and Wendy. So in a very weird way at times, there's kind of like a sequence of these 6 by 6 panels, just like a comic book page. But as one of the things I have been incorporating in my black and white work, and inking, is to push the white page to almost, I don't want to say complete darkness, but to really be thick with blacks, but then to be able to work back with whites.
Yeah.
So this is one of the 4 pieces I'm doing,
Oh,
and
wow.
this is a scratchboard that's already prepared by Clayboard. No, it's what's the
Yeah,
company?
that's rich. I
There it
I
is.
uh I sometimes get that effect, but well, see, yeah, you're going black and then working backwards. It's all,
Yep.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and then this is actually one of the first ones I did. I'm gonna actually put in the show because I just like the pirate. This is actually a real Spanish princess who lost her eye in like a horse accident or something, but this is
Hmm.
almost faithful to the original portrait. I just really like
Look at you
the
go.
thing. And and then there's a pretty hardcore, like, I would say, like, cool scene, like with metal music and cars and stuff. So I always throw in, like, ceremoniously,
Yeah.
the skull.
Hmm.
And then I did this one, which is I think it's a cat skull. I didn't write on the back of it.
Yeah, I was just ordering some stuff, and I threw in the I'm gonna try out the white uh brush pen, which is made by what's that brand, Kagasutsi or something. The
The
uh the
white one or
the white.
this?
Yeah, I was trying to remember what that jar of white cover up I used to get was called, and I don't think they make it anymore. But
Yeah, I just got into these guys.
it was
They're
like,
called the leader.
right. I see Deleter there. I think that's the same company that makes the comic pages. Um, but yeah, it's like Kagatuzo or something like that. There's a Japanese manufacturer, and they have these like little jars of white that you just dip in with a brush, and it's supposed to be very opaque and really like one time covering. So it is.
Where did you go? Because not that we're sponsored by jetpens.com. I love that website. You
Oh
check
yeah,
them out?
I think I came across them in my search, but
Yeah.
I ultimately ordered from Amazon because I had an order already in for a
Okay.
bunch of stuff from my classroom, and and I always check eBay to see if there's any competitive pricing, but It depends. I just go where the deals are for some of the other stuff, and then if you're getting a shipment, it just pays to tack on because you don't pay extra shipping. But
Sure. Sure.
yeah, so working with white, it's interesting. When you were talking before about using black pencil or graphite, I was wondering, on because when we're making the original art for a comic, you have the camera ready artwork that's going to go to the printer, and then you have the original art itself. And so sometimes you want to set it up so that the original art also has a second life of its own, which means you might want to minimize anything that's pasted on, or you know um white out that might, like, discolor over time in a different rate than the paper, because those things can make the original art look a little, different if somebody wanted to, let's say, frame it and display it, right? I
Hmm.
mean, wouldn't it be perfect if it just all came out like black ink on white paper all in one shot? But that's not how comics work in the real world. And if you look at any Marvel or DC original art, that's up for auction, like with Heritage or that, you can see all the whiteout and all the paste ups and everything. And
Yeah, and I love that.
I know, well, you get to love that look, but if you want to display, like, if you have a Frazetta page, you're hoping that it isn't like a big, glued on title on the top, because that
Most definitely, it's going to be.
it's
I mean, if it's not, then that means, he was paid to do that. He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
paid
sure. No, but
to,
these title graphics, a lot of times these are all just, pasted on, and sometimes the actual adhesive that they use is so destructive to the page. It could, like, spread, or it could, discolor, or it could eat through, the actual page. It all depends what it was made out of. Different glues from the 1940s.
right.
It may
Well,
not like.
speaking of Frazetta,
Yeah.
he used sub quality art supplies. It is known for a fact that he would just go to either the hardware store or the um, grocery store and buy basically kids materials, and that's I mean, even the oil paint quality was just some um,
Right.
cheapo, just, hey, here's an oil painting set, but it's only $10 for 69 tubes of oil paint, or something like that. So,
Right, because,
yeah,
and this is what I'm talking about, right? If you're thinking ahead and planning ahead, so that you not only get your camera ready art, take a picture of it and send that to the printer, right? But the original art, because let's face it, all those pages that Kirby made, and Gil Kane, and all these, like, classics, John Romita, the original art is worth way more than they got paid to do it at the time. And it ended up being, I mean, they probably didn't know it when they were doing it, but after a while they caught on. Once there was conventions and there was
yeah,
a burgeoning original art market, then they figured it out, and they were like, hey, how do I get all my artwork back, from the early 60s and all through the 70s, number one. And number two, let me start charging appropriately for this original art. Like, if you have a big name artist and you're paying them a page rate, and then they keep their original art, they're probably going to make more money selling the art in the secondary market than they're going to make making your comic for you.
yeah. But here's a bone to pick, not with you, but just the comic book industry at large. And we experienced this firsthand with the image explosion. They would put out, their normal 20 to 25 page, whatever comics, but five to maybe even 10 of those pages were eye candy pinups that really had no structure in storytelling. or a benefit to the
because
structure.
yes, because they had their eye on the secondary art market, and they're like, well,
Yeah.
this will just be a filler page for the comics.
But
So,
then young people came into the market at that level. In other words, very few people entered the marketplace in the mid 90s with any skills or comprehension for storytelling. And so they were being thrown into the mix. And Marvel and DC, that's when they started reverting to naming um, the writers over the artist because they were so pissed off that they got
well, who has a
knocked down,
yeah, who has a bigger
by
following?
Image.
Yeah, it depends who has a bigger following. Maybe you have an artist that hasn't been around the block, and you pick.
But before then, to get into comics, one of the major things that you had to show is your ability to tell a story, not draw a cool thing or a cool Spider-Man pin-up, these types of things. And I think we're still in that. Um, um, it's like a hole. It's like a hellhole.
Yeah, well,
Be-
it's like anything else. There are creative artists that last the test of time, and you may not realize it in the immediate term because people are just trying to maybe get something published for the first time, or maybe trying to support themselves. But when we look at the original comics, they didn't know how to tell a great story. Some of those things are really clunky. It was just about who can rush something out to the market back then. Then, when the art of comics and sequential storytelling really came into its own, you did have, like, a big delineation line between good and bad, and the comic consumers became a little bit more discerning, right? So that
yeah,
I think that's what you're talking about, that
yeah,
period. Yeah. Yeah, so here we are, many years after. If we're talking about, the comics began, superhero comics began in the late 30s. Marvel took off in the early 60s, and here we are, more than 60 years later. It's been through a lot. It's been through a lot, and you're talking about the boom of the Image comics, where the term creator owned became a buzzword. They no longer were the properties going to be just work, existing characters that are owned by corporations, who have already changed hands many times. Whether it's Marvel and being acquired and hostile takeovers of Wall Street, or whether it's DC and their Time Warner acquisition, and before that it was National Periodical. So there was always, like, big businesses that saw print comics as kind of like a redheaded stepchild, right? And sometimes not making that much money, but just a really cool thing to have on your portfolio for all kinds of, like, tie-ins. And I think they just knew that there was a lot of value. They just didn't know how to bring it out for profit and for shareholders, until, of course, the Marvel Studios started making hundreds of millions of dollars for Disney.
which then we're in this world where I don't know. Have you seen these new Frank Miller presents Ronin 2 and
Yeah, I've seen the
did you
rumble.
see that on did you see it on
I,
Cartoons Kayfabe,
I
the
did no,
review of it?
I didn't take
Man,
the
they
deep
they
dive.
were savage. They were savage and rightfully so
Yeah.
because it's just Philip Tran who Tran sorry name and everything, phenomenal artwork. I mean, phenomenal.
Uh-huh.
But the whole, like, there's two stories in this little $1 sampler, and just from what they flipped through and you could see and everything, it read like, hey, somebody out there pick us up and put us on TV. Nothing to
Right.
do with comics. Nothing to do with comics.
Well, it was like a screenplay in visual format.
Just you gotta see it. I mean,
Right, and
it's
that's
a
the level.
shame,
Look,
but that's still very much going on, you know.
yeah, Frank Miller has already been at the heights of Hollywood production. He had Sin City 1 and 2, and then he had 300. Um, I don't know, and maybe some other endeavors that escape me. But when
RoboCop too.
he was involved in RoboCop too.
Yeah, he was a screenwriter.
Okay, so when so now when he's making a print comic, like I said, that's only the first use. Then you're going to repurpose it, and you're talking about exponentially more money if you can sell a property as a screenplay or option the rights to a production company, right? I mean, the artist can get paid right then and there, and that's kind of a gamble.
Right.
That's kind of the gamble that James O'Barr, took, and some say lost, but I say it's all good, in the hood if you're getting your wares out there to the public and you're getting your name out there. But you know,
But this is goes into my critique of creativity in just comic books right now, of just overkilling with all of this other nonsense you're hoping is going to happen, and allowing then the craft, the art, the storytelling to basically be not only secondary, I think at sometimes, but just quasi tertiary, if not existent at all. In other words, just very well written, I mean, very well drawn, maybe. It's just, it's still very frustrating, you know, to have to be in this coexistence with television and movies as
I
uh,
don't, I don't,
as
I don't
as
see
a
it that
comic
way.
book
I
artist.
don't see it that way. I what
Well,
I
I know you don't. I'm not trying to pick a fight here, but at the same
No,
time,
but
I'm not going to sit here and go, yeah, it would be great to sell all these original ink pages of Turbo Pit Fighter, but I'm not making these original Turbo Pit Fighter pages to be sold.
no, we're
I
making
went through that already, and it doesn't work because nobody is trying to collect Turbo Pit Fighter over Big Barda, you
right.
know, She-Hulk.
Well,
That's not existing
right. Yeah, I know.
unless we get picked, you know, Turbo gets picked up and it's on a television show and we're in our 90s or something like that and we kept the pages, then
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
that's more logical.
yeah. What you're saying makes sense. We're trying to make the best story possible because that's story and visual storytelling, because that's what will
Stand the test of
stand the
time.
test of time, and that's what will not only attract audiences, but also, possibly, because you don't have to have a great big audience to attract, Hollywood. Men in Black,
No,
a good example. It was just like, and I
it's
think,
well done. It
I think
was
the,
well done. It's great, cool concept.
I think the Walking Dead also was started as a
Yes.
indie
And a
comic.
black and white and black and white and still
Right.
being
And
printed as a
so
black and white comic.
the readership was probably measured in the tens of thousands, if that, you know, and then they ended up on the big screen as these huge properties. So you never know what could catch the fancy of a Hollywood mogul, that's putting something together, and they don't have any scripts. They're desperate. They've done it all before. Everything's sequels and remakes and formulaic, Hollywood drivel, and so they'll look anywhere. And if they have a vision for putting something up on the screen, I mean, there's a pretty good track record when you think about the comics or comic properties that have been flops. They're out there too, like Heavy Metal, or
Heavy
you
Metal 2,
know,
not
Heavy
Heavy
Metal
Metal.
too. Yeah, I mean, the Catwoman movie was a flop. The Red Sonja movie was a flop. But you know, but look what the success that you've seen, and what it is what you're talking about. It's you know, it's merchandising, and Hollywood and these big corporations have figured out, once you have somebody's attention on a character, you can sell them t-shirts, toothpaste, shoelaces, every single kind of thing. And and the movie is the big vehicle that that gets it into the
It's advertising.
the big public spotlight, right? And that's
Yeah.
what we also learn about Saturday morning cartoons. It is the most blatant business for selling toys, that so much so that the networks at one point didn't have anything on there that wasn't directly licensed toy property that they had back end on. you know so we're just trying to make our little story, and see maybe if it will stand out among the thousands and thousands of other offerings. um Depends exactly when it'll come out and the timing of it. Will it make a splash? Will it get some good reviews? And how much are we able to promote it? There's a certain amount that you can do with your own time and free will, and then the rest is just up to the fates.
Well,
The
let me repeat why we're doing what we're doing. Jake and I have real jobs that consume the other 6 days of our week, families, a life, that type of thing. So we don't have the amount of time to be able to put into, I just refer to like forcing out a book, like sitting down and putting the book together, bam. And so you were the one that actually came up to it because, we had about a month where neither one of us was really getting anything done, because we just didn't have a focus, by time. And you're just like, well, why don't we just do a podcast where we just get together? And I'm like, as soon as you said it, I was like, duh, that's the best way to do it because and it's the number one reason we're doing it, is that it puts us on a schedule of time, 1 hour a week. I'm
yeah,
inking a page. You're penciling a page. We're also talking about this is more reality, I think, in a focus of initially getting involved in comic books nowadays than it would be to try to like invent or create something to attach itself to something that's very successfully going on right now. And we both know and have accepted it's probably going to take us about another year. Well, maybe not another year, but we'll probably definitely this time next year have something in the way of a physical comic book to be like, hey, look, everybody, we were talking about this back in 2020, and it's what? Yeah, we did it, and this is
right.
where we're at, and these types of things. So once again, I just want to repeat, we're not doing this to promote Turbo yet. We're doing this so Jake and I show up and make the damn thing.
Yeah, this
So
this is like when on New Year's Day, when people join a gym, right?
yep,
We're holding each other accountable here for an hour a day
yep,
to getting some progress done on this comic, an hour a week at least. And and it's working. We have a pace
yep.
now, and if we stay on this pace, we will have a product and we will have a timeline. And so that'll be that. It's modest. It isn't like we're rushing these things out. We really get to take our time. There's no deadline. And and I think it's enabling us to make a decent product. And not only that, we're very carefully considering what we're doing every step of the way here, because we're together. Like, imagine if Jack Kirby was making comics, if he was on the phone at the time with the inker or the script writer or something. There's so much more you can just pour over and refine as you're thinking ahead to the storyline, that they didn't have, because the communication technology wasn't you know
And we talk about this in our breakout videos with Commandy extensively. And we're going to be doing episode 13 after this. Jack Kirby was a showman, a businessman first. He had to create something that the publisher wanted. Excuse me, not only does the publisher want to publish, but also the fan base hits it very, very hard. And then therefore he's doing another 10 issues. So he knows he's got mortgage payments and the kids' schools paid for, the car payment for the next 10 months. And I think but at the same time, he had to keep his finger on a pulse. He
Right.
couldn't just do it. And Commandy is a ripoff from at that same time in the early 70s, Planet of the Apes come out. So we're looking at, the reigning
But everything,
king of comics.
I mean, everything was a ripoff of everything else. That going back to the 40s, right? It was all just chasing trends and, and what was selling with the other company. That was your marketing research. It's like, what is the other company selling? Oh, the
Yeah.
Westerns are selling.
What's hot?
Let's
What's
do a
hot,
Western.
Jake?
And then, they went through all these they went through all of these, different phases, or I should say genres. Where's the other book here? Um, where Martin Goodman, he was a businessman. They were not trying to create lasting art, and so this book has the very early history of Martin Goodman, the publisher. And look at this pull quote right here: "This field is full of pirates." Right, this right, that could not accentuate what we're talking about any better, right? So you had, and it was all about trickery too, because these guys had, they were desperate for money and distribution, and they had these very narrow timelines. So they would put everything into a cover, and then they would hire all these, writers to just hack out, these stories. And you know I mean, it's better if the story's good, but the cover just keeps getting people, because these covers are so compelling. They keep coming back for more, and you can see that they would repurpose the same cover over and over and over, which would get them into legal trouble with the Federal Trade Commission, because you cannot take stuff that's already published and pass it off as new material. And that's exactly what Martin Goodman was fined repeatedly for doing, as was everybody in this genre. I mean, in this era of publishing, these are the pulps, and this is what happened before the comics. Before they started transitioning into comics, and so you can see they had different iterations where they're going into sports stories, and they're going into war stories, and they're going into detective stories. There's a lot of this bondage imagery here, right? Look at this, like these damsels in distress, right? That was always a great hook. Here's the war stuff, and then as you go further and further, you get to look. This is like torturing women. Sometimes there was people, that just went way too far. Look at this, whipping naked women, and weapons and stuff. And they were experimenting any way they could to try to make a buck. And a lot, look, this is where I'm up to in reading this book. But a lot of this was just, trying to find, where can we sell some paper here? How can
Yeah.
we sell
Yep.
some paper?
Yep.
And it's no different when we get to the golden era of Stanley and Jack Kirby. It was not trying to get the readers, give the readers what they want. It was, what can we convince Martin Goodman to let us publish, to try, and then see if there's a reader reaction. And once they got, him to greenlight some superhero stuff with the Fantastic Four, you know, the readers then, responded, and they bought it, and it was a success. It was successful. And so then they started making Fantastic Four monthly, and they started building on it with the next one up was Ant-Man, and then Thor, and then and they went from there. The Hulk is and so this is this other book in my extensive nerdy research, um you know actually how it went. They were just trying to build on small successes to try to get to that next plateau. And you're talking about month by month timeline here of how this all happened. This is Stan Lee right here, and working with Jack Kirby, who had some great instincts that really advanced the ball. But really key to this was the 1959 Fly superhero comic that Jack Kirby did for Archie Comics, because that led to the ideas for Ant-Man and Spider-Man, and so that's a big deal right there. So yeah, it's us today, we're in a completely different era. We have day jobs, and we're just like, trying to make art. We're not trying to, chase, some sales. It would be nice to finally, print the comic and have some sales, but that's not what we're trying to do here. That's not the goal. The goal is to, have a graphic novel that's printed out that will proudly stand the test of time on the shelves of bookstores and
And
comic
I
stores.
also want to bring in the fact that this is a 20, almost 25-year-old story, Turbo Pit Fighter. Um,
Yeah,
and so, I was due to ink issue one of Turbo Pit Fighter back in 2000 or maybe 2001, and then life came along a calling, and we just ended up having a diversion in where our lives were going, because you're up in New York and I'm down in Wilmington, Delaware. But I just think it's so fascinating how little has changed in our identifiers for wanting to make a comic book. I mean, our skills have definitely improved to some degree, but I think I might even be de-evolving a lot of my higher brow thinking about making art and stuff, to just get back to the school days. Like I said, some episodes back, was like, hey, we're all at Jake's house hanging out and making a comic book.
right.
So, we've got a lot going on here, but in the end, we have a horse and a cart. The horse is before the cart, which is, we want to bring the best story and art together that we can bring. And we show up every Sunday at 11 o'clock
Here we
to work for an hour.
here we
So
are. And,
I'm just impressed. I'm impressed, Jake. I'm just
and
gonna say it out loud.
I also have to make a comment, right? Because looking back on our story, this is the story of a lot of people, and in a society, we're in this rat race, dog eat dog society, and we were creative in our 20s when we first met. And we were producing stuff, we were doing some work, and we were working for some companies, and then we were doing some self-publishing stuff, and then yeah, I had some kids, and I had to get something more stable. um but in other countries, right, like I'm thinking of some Scandinavian countries, they have like art grants, and they have like small business uh administrate small business agencies that help people, that say, okay, if your talent is more of a creative talent, and you're on a timeline, we're going to spot you, right, and we're going to help you develop into money making entrepreneur, so, or a so that you can contribute, and give back to the tax base. And at the same time, they're also promoting the arts, and they're also advancing the culture. So I'm thinking about this program that Denmark had. They would take, so like sometimes some kids get into a band, and they're forming a band in high school, and then they get serious and they start touring, and maybe they got a couple songs recorded, and they're seeing some success. Denmark has programs. I don't know if they still have, but they had, when I was researching this, programs to pay stipends to those kids to go out and travel internationally and spread around this great Danish music that they're making, you know and it's subsidized. And here in America, we have, like, the National Endowment for the Arts and everything. It's all cut. and it got controversial because they funded, like a museum display that had like, Mother Mary, in it, and no, and the ultra religiosos didn't like that, and it just like completely became, this political football about like, oh, funding the arts, it's a waste of taxpayer money. Like everybody needs to get back to work, cut that long hair, and get back to work. And if and they say this on, on talk radio all the time. If you work 14 hours a day and you really bust your tail, maybe you can get ahead and have yourself a decent life, and buy yourself a house and all that stuff. And I'm like, 14 hours a day, that's not sustainable, right? That's going to wear your body down and wear your mind down. And so I just have to say, like, we are poster children for, you know we're basically persistent comic nerds that never gave up. Our having one hand in maybe like some commercial art where we're making some money, and the other hand in, creative arts where we're actually doing art for art's sake, and even if it doesn't, make money. And just to
Jake, your camera cut out.
oh
Your
yeah.
battery might be
Yeah,
your
I think
battery
it's
might be hot. You get you hot. You got your peas out.
no, it was just the low battery warning. So
Okay.
I'll just
All right.
stick the plug in when we go. There we go.
All
Um.
right. Cool. Keep
So
going.
so yeah, and I just want to point out that this wasn't the case back in the 40s and the 50s. In those days, if you could scratch out a living as a comic book artist or writer, imagine, supporting. So I write comics for a living. Like I wake up on Monday morning, and I start typing, and I'm typing out stories about, Dr. Fate or whatever. Imagine that's your day job. So the reason why that was possible is because the cost of living, was cheaper. And now we spend so much on housing and so much on the cost of living, which is food and pharmaceuticals and clothing and gasoline and all that, that it's just not possible to have, a substandard income. You have to have this like robust income just to survive. Especially if you live in New York or California or someplace like that. So what that does is that creates an opportunity for, artists from overseas to, to come into the space. And if, they can work remotely and turn in their work, if they're doing good quality, $35 a page goes a long way in, a country like, the Philippines, or wherever they might be, South America, wherever they might be coming from. So it's just, it's not a complaint, but it is just a lament that there's so much creative talent out there that the world is missing out on, because young people, when they're still in the prime of their, development, are not able to do it full time and support their art and their craft, and improve. Instead, they have to waitress, or they have to, you know bite the bullet and, get a real job. Like me, I became a teacher. I teach school every day. um and so, what could have been, if we, had the financial wherewithal, back when we first met, to
Yeah, but just to kind of jump in there, when you had come into having your firstborn, I was still, oh gosh, I guess I think I was 30, but
uh-huh,
I was still in my my party zone.
right.
So, and
Wait,
when it came,
when you say partisan, are you talking about you're smoking doobs and drinking beer, or are you saying that you were doing comics? You're making art for
nah,
art's sake?
no, no, well, I mean, the way I got through the 90s was, until I got into animation, the flash animation with you at the end of the 90s, I
Yeah,
would
yeah,
work at restaurants, and
yeah.
I would work that restaurant, and obviously it would connect to the party element.
Right.
But I would save as much money as possible. I live downtown in Wilmington, so I live in the cheapest part of town, and my rent and all my expenses were real low. But I would take 2 to 3 months off
Right.
each year,
Yeah.
and then I would sit down and work. Now,
I
some of
love
that
that.
time was consumed by you calling and saying, "Hey, I got this opportunity. We can do this." And then, okay, or "Hey, we want to work on this." Hey, okay, okay. And if things came along, I would do it as long
Yeah.
as it was in the party mode feeling of making comics. Because I mean, I've done the same thing, Jake, where you go back, you think, "Oh, well, if we had this or we did that or this didn't happen, we could." Ah, so it's a big waste of time because once again, we have a lot that we're bringing to this process than just making a comic book. We've set it up, and now that we're way in our 50s, and we have all of the experience of emerging onto the internet, understanding what it took to be at a show, comic book show, or any kind of thing to be promotional, to be recognizable, to gain attention, these types of things. We're interweaving it to the way it is right now, and
Yeah.
how that's being grown and
Yeah.
expanded. And I've said it before, and I'll say it over and over again. Most definitely, this YouTube channel will be our comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And you will start with episode 1, and you will binge through 472 over 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however, or six months. There'll be 6 comic books and a graphic novel companion if you so choose, digitally and physically, so on and so forth. But what we're doing in the age of now is exactly what I think everybody should be doing, which is just cutting out a little bit of time out of the chaos of the world, making a living, running with the Joneses if that's what you feel like you have to do. And then, you know, one pebble at a time, you end up with, you know, this ground over here, this little foundation, and then you can put this on top of it and put that on top of it. Our youth was one that was structured for us to just kind of go buck wild and take chances. Oh, we've done enough of that. We've
Youth
we've
is
done
for,
that.
yeah.
Youth is wasted on the young.
No, that's okay.
Um, but I think at the same point, we're in a good place, you and I would be a little panicky and maybe a lot more anxious if we were in our, like, let's say we were both like in our 60s. We're
Well,
trying to get
that's
this
probably next.
done. So we have to get this thing done in the next 10 years. So, but
Right. Well,
so it's not that embarrassing. But
yeah.
I mean, I'm very proud that we're up to episode 38, which is coming to an end right now because we try to keep these at 45 minutes, and for bite sizedness.
Yep.
And but yeah, I mean, and once again, I feel like we're definitely in our own stride now, you and I, in doing this. We're not showing up. Oh,
Yeah. Well,
Jake, I
we're
think we
not.
should do this now, which
Yeah.
is what youth would do. We should do this now. I mean, that's a lot of the conversations we used to have on the phone. I don't know, Jake. I don't know, Kurt. Maybe we'll try it, but let's finish this and da, da, da,
Right.
you know. And I got a kid, you know.
Right. Well, yeah. Big plans and dreams and everything, and then when you get together at conventions, everybody gets all hyped up because you see what everybody else is doing, and
Yeah,
it
I
feeds
miss
off
that.
each other.
Yeah, I miss
Um.
that.
So yeah, just before we go, some show and tell. I'm working on this poster, concert poster. I just cranked
New
this out.
one?
Yep. Yep. We have a show
Oh
on.
yeah. Oh
My
yeah.
band has a show on the 19th, November 19th. It'll be over by the time anybody sees this video, but we are we do a nice poster every time we do a show, and so I just cranked this out. There's a lot of band names here and a lot of writing, right? There's all these bands. This band, particularly 6 to 8 Mathematics, are a great band, but their name is very long, and so you have to really like squeeze a whole bunch of stuff in. But I'm making just like this kind of like robot giantess, and she's like threatening the city, and there's like a nun screaming, and all these people getting trampled. So there's all that, and then I think I have all the information up here. I'm gonna do kind of like some psychedelic lettering up here for the name of the club. Just wanted to share that, and the other show and tell piece I had was a pinup of Turbo that I found, that I guess I drew at some point and abandoned. So I was just revisiting it. Here it is, and not sure what she could be doing here. I guess I just started to draw maybe when I was on the phone or something.
Can you
And
drop it a little bit? Can I see her? Can I see her face? Or
oh,
go up? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah, so it's, I started with blue line pencil, and then I'm going over it with black, with regular ink, pencil, and I kind of like how it's coming out. But what is she doing? She's got her arm up in the air, so is she throwing a punch, or is she like raising her arm in victory after she's leading a battalion? What else do I do around here? Those maybe
Winning a pit fight.
right after a pit fight's over. Well, then she's got to be more bloody, and
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Once
yeah.
again, can you send me a copy of that? Can you shoot me a high res photo and
Well, yeah,
just,
when it's
and then send it to me?
when
Okay.
it's done, I definitely will. But
Well, not
now,
done. Let me have a go at
yeah, now that you gave me the idea, this will be like right after a pit fight, so I can put her defeated, hulking opponent right here, and then maybe like some indications of crowd. Maybe we'll just like show a little, piece of the peanut gallery out there. Great, thanks. That's why we do this. But there's that. I think I had some other sketches that I,
It's
but
awesome.
nothing. I guess nothing. I can't wait. Anything you wanted to show and tell before we sign off?
No, no, I just showed those the the scratch boards. So
Right. I still have this whole comic that I do with my students that is ready to be published. It's 28 page. Wait, how many pages? 20. Oh, 32 pages, all laid out. That just need, and I have the cover. So the only thing holding this up is the inside front and inside back cover, and just me getting off my dumper. But yeah, that's 31. This is just a pinup, which I don't think is going to be used. But this is Pearl White Malady, and I'll eventually include links to that on my link tree. Um, when that's ready to come out. That's another interesting project where we do stuff not on the highest professional level with middle school students and high school students. um, but yeah, that was I guess that was a quick 45 minutes, right?
heck yeah.
All right, I didn't get to my next page, but I did finish that montage page finally, and it's important to put a lot into your first page, obviously, because if it's not good, people are never going to get to the second page or the third page.
All right, Jake, then we can close this one out and say goodbye till next week. 11 o'clock every Sunday Eastern time. We upload a new video. I think 26 just went up.
Hmm.
So go ahead and check them out. They're on a binge playlist. So, start
Yeah.
number one and listen to us and watch us, create this. And then we're definitely heading over to make an earlier posting, which will happen on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. of the first 20 issues of Jack Kirby's Commandy Last Boy on Earth, where we just dive in because we're doing it a post-apocalyptic romance comic, and he made one of the original post-apocalyptic romance comics. So,
Right.
with
Yeah.
that being said, do you have anything to finish with?
No, this is just tune over to our Commandy stream and check those out, and then come back to the next one of these, and we'll see you next time.
Hot damn. See ya.